Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing HUTAN Life in the Rainforest from the Op. HUTAN is a 1 to 4 player game in which players are going to be building out their own personal rainforest across 9 rounds of play. In each round, players are going to be drafting these cards that are going to give them flowers. Flowers are essential for being put out onto the board that will eventually turn into trees, and some of those trees will turn into animals. You're doing all of that in order to score points for completing areas, for getting animals into areas, for the trees themselves, as well as the scoring variable scoring goals if you are playing in the advanced mode. That's a kind of very high level overview. But the general idea is flowers good, trees good, complete areas good, incomplete areas very, very bad, although there is a family variant that will ignore the negative points you'll otherwise get for starting an area and not completing it. This is all very abstract. Let's go ahead and drive down a bit more into detail. Let's pretend we're playing a 3-player game. You're going to go ahead and deal out in each round of play. You're going to be dealing out 5 cards. And we'll walk you through this over here. Let's deal these 5 cards. And then from there, starting with the player who has the first player token, this pangolin over here, they're going to choose one of these 5 cards, taking the flowers on the card. So for example, maybe I go ahead and take this card over here with the yellow and the red flower, and I'm going to take a yellow and a red flower and put it out onto my personal player board. This is a good time to note, this is my personal player board. Players are going to have their own matching configuration of these boards. These are 4 different boards, and whichever configuration and pattern you start with, the other players are going to mirror. I'm going to take these out and place them onto my board. My first flowers can go anywhere, subsequent flowers are a little bit more restrictive. In this case, I'll go over here, placing them across over here. My first flower goes on the board, second flower goes subsequent. That's not a problem, done. The pangolin goes into the row. From there, the next player takes a card, maybe they draft this one. Third player might take the pangolin over there, that's going to make them first player the next round, which brings it back to my turn, and I'm going to start by taking, I'm going to take this one over here, taking a yellow and a black. Now the next flowers I take have to go adjacent to flowers that already exist. So for example, I can place these out over here if I wanted to. In this case, I'm actually going to go ahead and layer that flower on top of the first one, because you can place that on top of existing flowers, and then the black one next to that. Flowers you take in the same turn have to be adjacent, and all flowers you take have to be adjacent to flowers already on the board. So for example, over here, I place this over here, place down my 2 flowers. At the end of this step, I check, and if you have a double flower, you go ahead and replace that with a tree. I'm one step closer to completing this area, a complete area being defined as an area consisting of flowers and then either trees or animals in that zone. But a flower on its own is not a complete area. You need it to be all trees or animals of the same color in order to be a complete area. Let's go ahead and back to the player, takes this one, takes that one, and then we move on to the next round. Now keep in mind, somebody else is going first because they drafted that pangolin marker. We're going to reseed the market with the next round, so we're going to go ahead and put out 5 more cards, and we're on round 2 of 9 in the game. The next player is going to go ahead and take their spot. Maybe they'll take this card over here, and then they're going to replace it with the pangolin in the market, which means I could take the pangolin, which does come with a flower of my choice, but right now I am working my way towards trying to show you how this all works, so I think I'm actually going to take this card over here. With this one, I'm going to place a flower on top of that black. I'm going to place a white flower over here, and then going this way with a yellow, because I'm trying to make this area entirely yellow. When I'm done with that, I will go ahead and replace that with that flower, and then done, and then again, continues to the player. Let's say the first player takes back their pangolin marker, it's back to me over here, and I can go ahead and choose. I will choose this one. Ooh, I'm going to choose, you know what, I'm actually going to be, you know what, I will choose this one over here. So we're going to choose this one, and we're going to place out a yellow over here, we're going to place out a blue over here, and a white over here. Now you may notice that I am trying to make sure each area is separate. This black area of 2 is only black. This white area is only white. This area over here is yellow. This one I'm working towards a blue. This 2x2 I'm working towards a red. Basically, whenever you have a zone, I'm trying to make sure that only flowers of those colors are in that zone. This is easier to achieve at the beginning of the game, gets significantly harder towards the end. We walk into round 3 over here, and the player's going, and they'll go ahead and take, again, that player who's still choosing first, will go ahead and take this one with the 3 flowers, they'll place the pangolin in the market, and I'll take this one, because this is really going to help me work towards my goals over here. So I'm going to place this like so, 1 and 2, and then replace both of those, because whenever you have 2, you replace it, replacing them with those trees over there. From there, we go ahead to the next player. The next player, again, will take, let's say they really need this double black. Double black can be very helpful. Anytime you have a flower that has double, it can often help you towards your goals. It goes back to the next player, they'll take that pangolin, and then I will take this one. You know what, actually, I'm going to take the pangolin right now in order to be first player next round, and I'm going to also put this token out over here. Now when I do that, this is again a double, so I'm going to replace it with a tree, and whenever you complete an area, this is now a complete area, that last token can be replaced with an animal. And as animals are going to be worth points, but they can also seed other areas. So I look at the orthogonally adjacent areas, and I can put out another flower over here, as well as another flower over here, turning both of those into trees. That's actually going to cascade over here because this would create an area where I could put an animal, but you are limited to one animal per turn. So even though this could otherwise create an animal, unfortunately once per turn means I am stuck there. That's basically the structure of what you're trying to do. You're trying to place out flowers onto the board. Those flowers, once you get a second flower on top, will then create a tree. The last tree in an area will create an animal. Animals can seed areas, but are also worth points. This brings us to how you're going to score in the game. At the end of 9 rounds of play, you're going to score for the following. You're going to first score for the trees you have. Each tree is worth 2 points in the game. You're going to score for your animals. Each zone tells you the number of points an animal is worth. The larger the zone, the more points that animal is worth. This animal over here, for example, is going to be worth, I believe, 6 points over here. Then you're going to score for your complete areas. So for example, right now, this area will be complete, this area will be complete, and again, there's a little completion area showing you how many points each area is worth. This one's going to be worth 4, this one's going to be worth 2. You score for your complete areas. But then, and there's the kicker, you are going to score for incomplete areas. Anything that you started and did not complete, which right now would be here, here, and here, those are started zones that I did not complete. You lose the points for those areas instead. Now, right now, obviously, this is in the middle of the game, but as you get to the end of the game, you will find that you definitely will have areas that you started and did not complete, and you'll be paying a hefty chunk of negative points for them. And then finally, if you're playing with the advanced mode, you're going to then score the goals. These are different goals to score for different things. For example, this goal gives me 2 points for every animal on a size 2. This one's going to give me 3 points for every black complete area. This one over here is 3 points for every yellow complete area. I'm going to get those 3 points right here. And you're going to score those from a large variety of like 20 or so goals, figuring out what points you got for those on your little scoring pad. Add it all up, see who won, and that is basically how you play HUTAN. There is a solo mode as well, which I have played through. I will not walk through how that plays. I'll say it's generally very similar to Cascadia, Calico, games like that, in which you're going to have a general pattern of how you draw cards. The basic idea is you still have the same number of total cards you're drawing, but every round you draw 3 cards and pick 1, and then go ahead and continue that process, discard the rest, draw 3, pick 1, rinse and repeat until you get to the end. And there are specific scenarios you can play through which give you a combination of board setup and goals, as well as a target score that you can work your way through, along with a lot of other things that give you different challenges, rules adjustments, all of that in the rulebook. Which brings us to my review of what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking when it comes to this game. Starting off with what I like. In general, this is a point scoring optimization game where it's all about trying to figure out the best way towards accomplishing all the goals, the general scoring goals, as well as the variable ones you have over here, and all of it is a challenge to go through. The part of this game that is rewarding for me is the base rules read pretty simple. When you first go through the game, it's pretty simple as far as, okay, you're doing this, you're placing flowers out, you replace those. It's mostly pretty straightforward. It's when you start to play the game that you realize how challenging it can be as far as making sure you set yourself up for optimal flower placement in order to actually score points, in order to set yourself up for ideal animal placement, to get to the animals before other players, to get them into the right spot where you can get the maximum spreading of additional seeding over there, as well as trying to manage the goals in the game that you're working towards and the boards, which will change the game. Playing with a different configuration of boards can be an entirely different challenging experience as you go through it, and you're trying to work your way towards setting yourself up there. Less is very much more in this game. Not at the beginning. At the beginning, more is more, but as you wind your way towards that 2/3 of the way through, you're very actively trying to find the right combination of flowers. This is also where being able to draft that pangolin token over here is incredibly key. Placing it back into the market and having it come right back out so players can draft it, even though it only gives you 1 flower, sometimes 1 flower is better, and also first turn order placement is incredibly important in this game, especially as you get to those later rounds and you want the right things. Combine that with the variable boards. Again, the way that you're going to start the game off is you can mix up the boards however you want, then set them up, and every player has to match the exact configuration so they're playing with the same general playing area. Then you're going to have the variable goals, which I would always recommend playing with. I don't think I've played a game without them. In general, I much prefer that additional variety of the experience, that you have the basic scoring metrics of what you're trying to do, but you also have an additional puzzle that keeps the game fresh as you go through it, and all of that together, the first player, the variable goals, the variable boards, and the general challenge of what you're doing force you to really examine how you build out your board, and you often find yourself in a situation where you want to bite off just a drop more than you can actually afford to do so, and you will find yourself paying those negative points. This is a game where your first game is very much a learning experience of how not to do things, and subsequent games will hopefully get you closer and closer. There's nothing quite like that first game where you get to the end and someone's like, I have 74 points, minus 32, and then you start to realize how you actually have to play towards an optimal scoring experience. Combine that with excellent solo play, and you have an additional set of scenarios. And again, it's not just the solo play, but there's variable scenarios you can play with other players, there's variable challenges you can go through, there's good solo mode. So overall, the game gives you a lot of ways to mix up the experience from the base experience, the advanced mode, and then the additional everything that's in the rulebook. As far as things I don't like in the game, first of all, the luck of the cards can very much be a factor in this game, especially when combined with that turn order. That drafting mechanism, if you're the last player drafting, you might get hit with the worst combination of cards, and you may not even get the access to that first player token. And while taking the first player token is incredibly key, sometimes in those earlier rounds, giving up a 3 card to get 1 flower, at least in the early game, is often not worth that trade-off. And the game doesn't really do anything to compensate for first player at the start of the experience, so there's a small aspect of feeling a little bit like you didn't get the right things, especially if you find yourself as the last player and then not being able to justify taking first player early on in the experience. Again, later in the rounds, you'll find that first player is taken almost immediately, so it's a very different thing. But at the beginning of the game, you can certainly feel like you get the short end of the stick if you don't have the right combination of cards coming out, and if you find that it's not worth taking the first player early on. I'll additionally say that as far as the solo scenarios go, I wish it had had more goals to them. Meaning the way the solo scenarios are structured is you're going to have a specific board configuration, and to be fair, these are solo and competitive scenarios, but you have a specific board setup, you have a specific subset of goals, and then you have a target goal to achieve. And so if you're playing competitively, you're trying to both hit the target goal and beat the other players, and if you're playing a solo, you're just trying to hit the target goal. I like that. There's like 20 scenarios to go through. I like that modularity to the experience and give me something to seek as a solo player, but I do wish the solo scenarios had more nuance to them as far as like, here's 5 goals and ways to score points, here's a target score, and in this scenario you're trying to get at least 3 yellow animals. Meaning I do find when it comes to similar games, having something that further differentiates the scenarios from a basic scoring game really gives me something extra to shoot for. Knowing that I have to do X, Y, and Z and get 3 of a color animal, or get 10 trees along the edge of my board, that very much I find is more of a challenge, and I wish these scenarios had gone that extra step to give me like just a drop more as far as reasons to dive through every single scenario that don't feel like beat your own score. Again, because they give you different goals, it doesn't totally feel like beat your own score, but it definitely feels like I feel they could have done a drop more and given me a significantly better solo experience. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, negative points are very much present. Now again, you can play the family mode variant, which I definitely recommend if you don't like those negative points. This is a game where you are going to get smacked in the face with a lot of negative points after your first game, your second game, your third game. Honestly, you will always get smacked with a lot of negative points, but it does get better the better you get at the experience. But if you don't like that negative scoring, go for the family variant where you can just ignore it entirely. And I see no reason why you can't combine. You could do the advanced variant combined with the family variant to just have goals without having the negative point scoring. Outside of that, I will say it's a little fiddly component-wise. These trees also, I find they often are coming apart on a regular basis as you grab them from the box. At this point, my box has half constructed trees and half trees that are falling apart and half trees that have fallen apart. So it's a little fiddly as far as the components, although I will say I do like these chunky animals. As far as final thoughts on HUTAN, overall, I really enjoy this game. It scratches that same itch I get from similar games as far as trying to optimize how I place things out in a game that is both thematically beautiful to look at, art by Vincent Trait and all that, but it's a visually fun game to look at as you build up your trees, as well as being mentally taxing as far as trying to find the right way to build out those flowers to optimize your endgame. Combine that, which is already a good game, combined with a good solo mode and a bunch of challenges, and the variability is there, the competitive there, the solo there, the variability there. There's a lot of reasons to continue to dive into this. Overall, it's a 4.5 5 out of 5. I do think that had the solo scenarios really gone that extra mile, I do think this could have hit a 5 out of 5 for me, like other similar games like Calico and Cascadia. Speaking of which, as far as recommendations go, I'll definitely recommend Calico and Cascadia. They scratch a very similar itch for me. I think HUTAN still falls a drop short of those, but it very much tries to be following that mold and does a good job overall at giving me a similar brain-burnery experience with, again, similar solo modes to go through as well. Additionally, check out Harmonies if you're looking for another game that's very much in this vein as far as that point scoring optimization, build out your board, and look good while doing it too. In any case, then until next time, I hope you found this review helpful. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and as always, I hope you have a good one.